South Africa is facing a big dilemma as it braces to host the upcoming BRICS summit. Now, if Vladimir Putin attends the summit in person, South Africa will be obligated to arrest him as soon as he steps foot on South African soil, as the International Criminal Court has found him guilty of war crimes. President Ramaphosa said that arresting Putin would be a declaration of war on Moscow from South Africa's side. So if South Africa arrests him, they will have a complete fallout with Russia. If South Africa does not arrest him, they will be in violation of the ICC norms. What will South Africa do? Will they arrest Vladimir Putin? For more on this, we're being joined by Dr. Malcolm Davis from Canberra. He is a senior analyst from the Australian Strategic Policy Institute. Thank you so much for your time, Dr. Malcolm.
It's my pleasure.
Malcolm, seems like South Africa is really stuck between a rock and a hard place. If they arrest Putin, they risk war with Russia. If they don't, they will be violating norms. Now, what are the chances that South Africa arrests Vladimir Putin?
Well, look, they should arrest him. If they don't, they are in violation of international law, and the International Criminal Court and other international bodies could then bring action against them. As for the notion that somehow it's an act of war against Russia, that's a ridiculous notion, frankly. I think that Putin understands that he is under basically an arrest warrant. If he leaves Russia, he should not leave Russia. He should stay where he is and not attend the BRICS summit. If he does attend and South Africa does not arrest him, then South Africa is in violation of its obligations under international law. And I think that it should then be heavily penalised.
Now, South Africa is a signatory to the International Criminal Court. If Putin attends the summit in person, what would be the implications for South Africa if they don't arrest Putin, if they don't go ahead with it, given the kind of fears that Cyril Ramaphosa has already voiced? What are the repercussions or consequences for South Africa in that scenario?
Look, I think it would be bad for South Africa diplomatically and politically. I can't see governments imposing economic sanctions per se, but I think it's not so much about what are the implications for South Africa. It's about the implications for the international order and the rules-based international system. If political leaders who have undertaken crimes against humanity and war crimes such as Putin has undertaken are free to travel without fear of arrest, it makes an absolute mockery of international law. So what needs to happen is that if Putin does attend and he's not arrested, then obviously South Africa needs to be penalised, but we then need to think more about how we strengthen international law so that this sort of thing can't happen again.
Dr. Malcolm, now if I were to just take it from Russia's side, given the scenario that Putin does not attend the summit, if that is the case, if he doesn't want to attend it in person, if he decides to attend it virtually, how would that reflect on Russia? Would it give out an impression of fear of arrest?
Well, yes, but I mean, he could always send Lavrov, the foreign minister, as a proxy. But really, Putin has brought this on himself. He was the one that launched this war. He was the one that authorized Russian military forces to undertake the actions that they did. He did nothing to prevent the Russian military from carrying out war crimes and crimes against humanity. He's guilty. And basically, he needs to live with that consequence, even if it means he can never leave Russia again.
Also, Dr. Malcolm, talk to us a little bit about the BRICS summit and how the influence of the BRICS organization, how it's spreading, more and more nations are wanting to join it. Do you feel, or do you consider this as a possible competition to the NATO alliance going forward, as more and more nations are kind of, shifting sides and going from one to the other?
I don't. I mean, BRICS is obviously a powerful group. It includes China, it includes Russia and India. So there are some powerful forces there. But the company they're keeping, the BRICS nations, China and Russia in particular, I think the states that are joining BRICS need to think long and hard about, do they want to ally with authoritarian states such as China and Russia, or do they want to maintain a liberal democratic order? The liberal democratic order that is centered around Western liberal democracies such as the EU, NATO, as well as democracies in the Indo-Pacific, such as Japan, South Korea, Australia, is not going to go away. We're not going to give up in the face of a challenge from Russia and China, no matter what sort of facade Russia and China try to create through organizations such as the BRICS. So this competition will obviously continue between Russia and China on the one hand and liberal democracies on the other. But those states in the middle need to pick their sides carefully because they don't want to be on the wrong side of history.
And finally, Dr. Malcolm, now I just want to take your opinion on the comments which have been made by Cyril Ramaphosa regarding the arrest of Vladimir Putin, which is essentially being, it's a pressure which is being mounted by the opposition party in South Africa. And Cyril Ramaphosa has called it to be a reckless decision. He's also said it would be risking war with Moscow. How far, talk to us about what you feel about such comments. What kind of stance does it show about South Africa regarding Russia, and how Cyril Ramaphosa sees Russia as an ally going forward, and how it doesn't want to sort of do anything to ruffle feathers with Moscow?
Well, look, I'm not going to get into South African politics, partly because I'm not an expert on that, but also it's a domestic issue. But I think in terms of the broader international picture, South Africans, as I said, really do need to pick their partners carefully. Do they want to be on the side of history that sees them ally with authoritarian states such as China and Russia, particularly when Russia is engaged in a brutal expansionist war in violation of every international law that exists? Or do they want to move away from those states and ally with Western democracies and build relations with the EU, build relations with NATO, build relations with Japan and Australia? I think there's a fundamental choice here to make. And the notion that somehow they're better off in the BRICS, which are dominated by authoritarian states, particularly, and I'm speaking specifically of China and Russia here, I think would be a mistake on the part of South Africa. I'm not convinced by this notion that somehow arresting Putin would lead to war. I think that's just bluffing.
All right. Thank you so much for all your inputs. Thank you so much for your insights. That was Dr. Malcolm Davis joining us from Canberra.